stretching classes or whatever they call them, stretching classes.
Gym stress me out.
That's fair.
I don't like peeing. When I turn red when I exercise or when I wheeze.
That's why I started going to Planet Fitness. It's always empty and I'm always the fittest person there.
Scott, should I just sit out from the get-go or should I just get up when Miller Street comes around?
No, he'll have you get up. So that we discuss why or whatever. You know. I guess she asked Kathleen, I don't know why we have to go into the audience if we don't vote or do anything.
That's what I mean. Can't I just like not submit a vote?
Yeah, that's what I would.
I feel like that's fair, especially if it's packed.
I
Yeah.
just feel awkward. Like, here, let me just sit on next to you. Is there a citizen?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to sit there's still 3 rows.
I'll just go stand. I'll just post up with Joe.
Just need to not get ready.
Good evening, Kathleen.
Yes.
Good to see you.
I don't know what's open anymore.
It's like this talk show
host where
Okay.
the host night during the beach.
Sorry, guests in the green room and then they pretend they have no
just because we're starting,
So we get them talking.
Good evening. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Plattsburgh. And the January 21st, 2020 meeting. It's on Tuesday because yesterday was a holiday. We have 3 applications. Number 2230, Kenneth Musso. Are you here? Oh, okay. Leslie and Barbara Lucas. And City of Plattsburgh, 22 Durga Street. Somebody's here for that, I assume. Okay. We're going to start with Mr. Musso. Come on up. Oh, you're not doing it? We'll postpone him then. We'll go to Lucas's. Come on up.
Doesn't ring a bell with me, that's why.
2 months ago.
How you doing?
Good.
What's the story? It's bigger than you thought?
Yes. And we barely 2 feet.
We understand. Okay, so we have an application for a 2-foot extension on the existing variance. Everything else is the same. Joe, did this change coverage or anything? No. So, actually, we think that your plan is wrong because you're showing 5 feet and 7 feet, but we think last time it was 3 feet and 5 feet. That you're 5 feet, the new addition, I just want to be clear about it, is 5 feet from the property line, not 7. Does that make sense?
I think it's 7, the hedges.
Oh, do you think, did you re-measure it?
Where our fence is, then we have a hedge, and then from the fence to the addition is 7 feet.
And that's the fence is on your it's your fence.
Right.
Joe?
I can't confirm what the property line is, all I can do is say what the.
Okay, so we're gonna
the
change
last
that
plan showed.
back to 7 feet. Okay, so if that's in fact the case, the last time I think we approved 5 feet, didn't we?
Yes,
Right, so actually, you're further away than you initially said. Right, does this make sense to everybody? And we had given you 10 feet and you went 12 feet
10 feet
out from your house.
south, right?
yes.
I mean, south
Yes.
still?
Yes,
But somehow it ended up being 12 feet.
Right.
Contractor? Just thought it was big, the right size? Oh, this will be nicer? Was that the story?
Well, space between, hallway and
okay.
stuff.
I'm going to open this to the board. Does anybody have any questions about this? And we're adding 2 feet, we're aggravating the side yard setback by 2 feet, but it's now only 3 feet instead of 5 feet, so it's probably a net less square footage in the side yard. Correct? Scott, do you agree to that?
Yeah.
So
we're talking
if
3
last time we had 50, 50 square feet of side yard,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, we're talking 36 square feet as opposed to what we approved, which was 50,
36, right?
which was 50,
Right,
10 feet and 5 feet variance.
right. So if he goes at 2, but he's 7 feet away, he's actually reducing the variance by 14 square feet? Do we agree
Yeah.
with that? Yeah. Right? Say yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so are there any questions from the board? Is there anybody in the audience that wants to discuss 7 Stetson Avenue? No? Closing the public hearing portion. Anybody have anything else? Okay, we have a seeker. A new seeker. Let's just see if it's. Number 2 is wrong. You said no, it's yes, and you need a ZBA variance and a building permit, right? And other than that, I don't see any changes. Anybody have a comment on the seeker? Then I'm looking for a motion regarding my ability to check the 11 boxes.
I'll make a motion that on part 2 of the seeker, we check no or small impact may occur in 1 through 11 and check the box that indicates no or small impact may occur in the environment and sign on page 4.
Seconded by Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. I'm looking for a motion regarding the variance itself.
I'll make a motion in regards to appeal number 2231, Leslie and Barbara Lucas at 7 Stetson Ave. The variance to be within 7 feet of the side property line for a distance of 12 feet as shown on the plans.
Okay,
I'll second.
second by Kathleen. Yes vote on your slip is to approve. Only one of you two is voting, right? We're gonna try something a little different tonight. We're gonna leave the extra board member up here, but only 5 of us will vote on the 2 items we're voting on. Okay, so you're all set. You have 5 yes votes. Hey, thank you very much for coming in. Have a good evening. Let's go to her. That goes to her. Not yet, right?
No, but I guess we can present it for him, otherwise, I can present it for him.
Okay, that's fine. All right, this is Musso, Kenneth Musso, Class B variance to eliminate screening fence. Musso Properties. Can you state your name to her for the record, sir?
Kim Ford.
And you're part of Musso Properties anyway, aren't you? Yes. So, Musso Properties went to the planning board, got site plan approval, which included a fence between 2 adjoining properties caused by, I believe, 10 parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yep.
The city ordinance requires screening fence between 10 parking spaces. The properties are both owned by Musso Properties, and they feel that it, as per the pictures, that it's detrimental. I don't think, it's not a cost issue, it's a look issue, right? You don't care about the cost of the fence, you don't like the look of it. My understanding is the planning board said if you don't want to do it, you have to come to us for a variance. And then if you get a variance, then you have to go back to them to amend the site plan to show that. So I'm going to open it to the board. Any questions?
I just want to clarify, when you purchased the property, was this the fence that was existing and it was removed?
No, that is another example of a fence from a different property.
right? They own both properties.
Okay.
They don't wanna have it, I guess what I would say is one consideration would be if we grant a variance and you don't put the fence up, there would only be, the variance would only be good as so long as Musso Properties owns both properties. Because the real issue for the fence, the reason for that fence is to screen an adjacent property owner from the actions of the neighbor and all the cars pulling in. I mean, I've seen the properties and all that. So that would have to be a stipulation of any variance would be that should the properties not be owned by Musso Property, either one, you'd either have to come back for another variance or put the fence up. Does that make sense to people? Okay, I'm gonna open it to the public. Any public comments regarding? No? Okay. I'm gonna close the public hearing portion. I do wanna say separately that, we should this process is a little different. It's not something we're used to where planning board says, yeah, we want you to do something. And they come to us for variance afterwards. It's actually usually the other way around. Before they go to the planning board, they come to us for variances. So, but I think this just came up and they decided that. So I'm gonna ask if the board has any more questions. If not, I'm gonna do the secret.
Hold on a second, Ron. I'm not sure that the planning board said they wanted this fence.
Huh?
I'm not sure the planning board said they wanted this fence. They approved a plan that showed the fence.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right. I'm sorry, I didn't say it clearly enough. Yeah, so the present plan shows the fence, the applicant doesn't want the fence, they're asking for that. They still have to go back to the planning board to say, we're not doing the fence because we got a variance and get that revised plan approved by the planning board.
Exactly.
Okay? Any questions? If not, I'm looking for something on the,
Why is it before the planning board?
Huh?
Why is it before the planning board right now?
10 parking spaces or more.
Okay, but.
They've already approved it. If
How
they
long
didn't.
ago did they approve it?
Last year, the project was completed this winter.
Okay.
It was approved last summer. I can't remember exactly.
The entire project needs planning board approval.
And they had that, and
Number
they
of
built
units,
the-
number of parking spaces. They got the approval, and the site plan that was approved showed the screening fence on there. Since then, the applicant has decided for one reason or another that he didn't want the fence, and as we discussed the process, he would need a variance to not provide this screening. And then even if he got the variance, he'd need to go back to the planning board for modification of that site plan.
Right.
Okay.
Regarding the seeker, number 2 is wrong. It needs a ZBA variance. It needs a planning board modification, right? And I guess it needs a building permit or, in a sense, it's shown on the building, because it's an approved site plan, as part of the permit process, correct, Joe?
Yes.
So it needs an amended building permit, right? Otherwise, I don't believe a fence has any, uses any energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does anybody have any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion on the seeker.
Number 5 is not completed on this. Number
What's
5.
Yeah, that should be no. And I think it actually might be, I'm not sure if it's consistent or not. We can say no for now. Anyway, I'm looking for a motion regarding the seeker.
I'll make a motion in regards to the short environmental assessment form for Appeal 2230, that after review of Part 1, that we check in Part 2, questions 1 through 11, no or small impact may occur, and as a result of it, the chair check in Part 3, the box that determines the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts.
Okay. Seconded by Ellen. Just raise your hand. Looking for a motion, if there are no other questions on the elimination of the screening fence.
I'll make a motion in regards to appeal 2230 for Kenneth Musso at a property at 92 Miller Street and 88 Miller Street, to give them a variance to not require the screening fence as required by our code.
Okay, seconded by
Did you
Kelly.
add a stipulation, Ron?
Huh?
You had suggested
Oh,
a stipulation. regarding
and
ownership.
stipulating that if either of the properties be sold, that the code be complied with prior to sale.
Right. Actually, the variance should be
The-
expired.
Right.
Okay. The variance only holds as long as the owner owns both properties.
Right. Okay? Somebody's second? Kelly, okay. Yes vote is to approve.
Bless you.
You're all set? Thank you very much. Okay. Motion to adjourn, did you say?
We have minutes first.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Who's here?
My
Please say your
name
name.
is Matt Miller. I'm Director of Community Development for the City of Plattsburgh. Sitting next to me is Gail Henderson King of Whitenberg Real Estate Investment Advisors, who is the city's project manager for the Durkee Development Project. And before I go into the overview, I will introduce the rest of the team who is here tonight. And guys, just raise your hands when I call your name. Steve McKenzie of McKenzie Architects, who is Prime's architect for the project. Charles Gottlieb of Whiteman, Osterman and Hanna, who is Prime's attorney. Deb Osterhout from Prime Companies. Turner Bradford from McFarland Johnson. Jeff Burns from Sutherland's, who is the city surveyor. Am I missing anybody? Okay.
Okay.
All right, so in 2017, as you all know, the city was awarded $10 million, spread amongst 10 different projects as part of the DRI. The bulk of the money was awarded to the Durkee Street redevelopment project, $4.3 million. 2.5 years later, a number of public forums, a lot of public input, 1 GEIS, and here we are. We are here to request from the zoning board 2 special use permits in relation to the project, one of which is to amend a previously approved PUD from the early 2000s to make it fit more appropriately with the scale and form of the development that is being proposed, and also a second special use permit that would allow for the use of residential apartments on the first floor of a multi-story structure within a PUD. That's the general overview, but for a little more detail, I will hand it off to Gail.
Right.
Thank you. Good evening. We were here back in August before you regarding these projects, and as Matt said, we've got 2 separate special use permit applications before you. There is a separate seeker process going on right now, which is involving GEIS and will eventually the seeker finding statement. And as part of that process, a lot of the issues that the zoning board will be looking at will be identified and covered within that process. There have been some changes since the plan was before you back in August. It's still a 2-lot planned unit development. The lots configurations have changed slightly. The existing building, known as the Gateway Building, which will be on Lot 2A, now includes lands along the Saranac River riverfront between Broad Street and Bridge Street. And the Durkee Street the Prime development will be on Lot 2B. The existing farmer's market building that was originally not going to remain is now going to remain and will be renovated for commercial and civic use, which you'll see on the plans. And Prime is working on revising the building elevations based on public input. We don't have those plans tonight. Those will be submitted when the application is submitted for the public hearing, hopefully next month. In our application, we have put together responses to the section 360-31B, the standards for review for the special use permit. So we've gone through each of those. I will not elaborate on those now, but that information is available in your packet, as well as a lot of that will be addressed in addition in the GEIS and the seeker process. Tonight is really informational only for you, and we are looking for your comments and questions on the project tonight. We would like to request a public hearing for the February zoning board meeting to officially start the process.
Okay.
And I'm gonna turn it over to Charlie, who's got some
Can we,
comments.
I just want to stop this for 1 second, just so, I wanted to say some stuff.
Sure.
To everybody that's here, some of you weren't downstairs at the 6:30 meeting, I want you to understand what's happening tonight. Let's start with that. This is not a public hearing. As I said downstairs, we, as a board, appreciate and like to see it instead of 2 or 3 people in the audience. We love seeing a packed house, truly. And your input is important to us, but we cannot take it tonight because this is not a public hearing, and anything that's said, used, or discussed tonight would not have been done under the rules of public hearings and under the public meeting law. So we are not going to be taking any comments or questions tonight. This is an informational meeting where we're going to listen to Prime, and we will probably ask some questions because we can, because we're not the public, but we represent you. And there will be a public hearing, but tonight what should happen is that people should pay attention and understand what the intentions are and what things they like or don't like about the project that they would like to see diminished or expanded or done, and what suggestions they're gonna have for Prime. The GEIS comment period ended December 23rd, I believe. And there are comments, and people have made comments, and I've actually read quite a few of those comments from both agencies and private individuals. And this process tonight is not a public hearing. We're not going to take questions. We're not gonna ask for comments. If something's not clear, then write it down, and you can ask appropriately to the building inspector or community development or us. This entire application is available online. As I said downstairs, if you don't have a computer or can't get it online, I'm sure you can go to the building inspector and they'll help you make sure you have access to see exactly what's in here. It's a very complete package. So tonight, I just wanted to say before anybody else starts talking or telling, this is not the time for the questioning or commenting. That time is gonna come in February certainly, and maybe even in March. I don't know if the GEIS will be done, that we can even still do anything in February, frankly. I'm not sure, maybe it will be. But that's gonna be the appropriate time. It's also going to the planning board for consideration of a whole bunch of stuff. If you wanna understand the process, we're here to do the special use permits, and then they're there to do the planning and the site planning. Our special use permit application process involves us making sure that it meets the conditions of it, which they've addressed in here, and we'll see if we agree to make sure it's right. But that's what, tonight what we're here for is to understand what Prime and the city say is going to happen to this planned unit development. A planned unit development, A, exists, and B, is an allowed use with special permit within that district, this size. Changing the boundaries is a relatively simple thing. That doesn't mean that what gets built on it is exactly what everybody's agreeing to or not agreeing to. But right now, what we have in front of us is the boundaries. We still have to consider the project as a whole. But I just want everybody to understand that. So we're gonna listen, pay attention, see what you like, see what you don't like, and we'll go from there. Okay? Thanks. That's all.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Charles Gottlieb from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna in Albany, New York. The Land Use and Zoning Council for Prime Plattsburgh. I'm here this evening with Turner Bradford, project engineer, Steve McKenzie, project architect, and Deb Osterhout from Prime Plattsburgh. I will try not to be repetitive in nature and only give you some new information. The city's PUD process is a unique one. And so I just kind of wanted to quickly go over that, mainly for the purposes of informing the public that are here tonight, and let the public know where we stand with the application process, where we stand with the secret process, and what we might expect going forward. As you've mentioned, the only applications tonight are from the city itself as the property owner for the PUD boundary change and apartments on the first floor. That sets the boundaries of the PUD itself. Now, what gets built on the PUD area itself is also of concern to the ZBA, but mainly the concern of the planning board. The city has applications now before the planning board for the actual PUD subdivision. That PUD subdivision is the zoning mechanism that allows variations from the zoning codes, such as setbacks, all sorts of things. And we have those itemized in the application. In addition, Prime Plattsburgh is the applicant for a typical site plan review that most developments would go through in the city. Those are going to discuss architectural elements, access elements, deliveries, loading spaces, things of that nature. Every time we come before the ZBA, we will inform you as to what happened with the planning board, what project changes have occurred, and so forth and so on. Those are the land use applications. The secret process is being conducted by the city council as the lead agency. The ZBA and the planning board are both involved agencies in that process. You've had the right to comment, so forth and so on. Right now, I understand the city is in the process of finalizing what's known as the final generic environmental impact statement. That document takes all the public comments that were had on the draft FGEIS and responds to those. Once that document is accepted by the city council, assuming that document is accepted by the city council, then 10 days has to pass for everyone to review it, including the public, and then the city council moves on to a finding statement. And in that finding statement, the city council is going to make its secret determination. You guys are probably more familiar with a negative declaration. This finding statement is kind of the same thing as a negative declaration, but it's once you've gone through the environmental impact statement process. It will have a host of mitigation measures and conditions that you might incorporate in your approval. The PUD process allows for flexible zoning, and it really is in line with the DRI purpose and grant that the city received. The idea is to revitalize Plattsburgh's downtown area, and this is the first step. Create a walkable community, create downtown or riverwalk area, and beautify the area, have commercial spaces that residents and visitors can access. That's why it allows for those variations from the planning board. With that said, that's where we are with the project right now. I believe you've had an opportunity to take a look at our initial concept plans. To the extent you have any questions, we're here to answer them tonight. We will, in the future, before the public hearing, be submitting some additional documentation. One of the documents we will submit to the board is what's known as a secret narrative. What we will do is we will assess the ZBA application and compare it to the secret finding statement. And we will demonstrate that the secret finding statement and the GIS process has considered all the potential environmental impacts of the project, which it's designed to do, and it will guide your board with its own secret review as well. We would ask the only action that the board take tonight is set a public hearing for February. I believe it's important to get public comment as soon as possible in the process. We've certainly had a lot of it thus far, but not specifically related to our ZBA applications. So that's really what we'd be asking, and it will also be referring to the county, and we will receive their comments as well.
I'm not sure that we set that. I think that the application at the building inspector's office would schedule the public hearing based on the fact that they think it's a complete application and we're ready. So,
Okay.
I don't, that's not an, I mean, as far, I'm not saying, it's not any big issue to have, and I'm sure all these people would love one in February, and so would we. So, that's not an issue, but I think actually, Joe, don't you schedule that?
Yes, I think the February meeting is the 10th, not the 7th.
Yeah, the February meeting is tonight, because of Martin Luther King Day, we're here on a Tuesday. Normally, we're the third Monday. The third Monday in February always falls in school vacation. We can't get enough board members, so we schedule it a week early. That way, we miss the school vacation. So it is the second Monday of February. And
Okay.
there's, right here, same time, same station. And that would be great. So I don't see it as an issue, and I think that'll allow people to react to the application as you have it now. I know that there's some changes to elevations. I have some, we'll get into some questions the board has too about stuff. But again, we're here for an informational meeting. It's great.
Mhm.
Whoever's next on the team, we're ready. Or is it you?
Just
And we're just waiting for.
any
that it?
questions you guys might have,
Oh,
unless I've completely
We're ready to
satisfied the
go?
board, and then we can all go. No.
yeah, I have a couple of questions. I understand that we're doing the boundary, and we've had discussions about this. We would think, I would think, I'll say it this way to start with, that we still have a responsibility, although the plan unit development process is not one where we grant variances. We understand that. There are no variances granted for this. These are any deviations are noted, which you've done. And then the planning board looks at them, and if they would have required a variance, examines them and says this meets the spirit of what would have been granted a variance or not. I suppose if they think that it wouldn't, they could talk to you about that, or they could talk to us about it and say, do you guys think you would have granted this variance? But I don't think they do that too much. But basically, that's the process. You're gonna vary. I have, as I told you last time, I'm still concerned about this 3-foot thing. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you, this 3-foot setback on Dorothy Street. Aside from the building, the size of the building, any of that stuff, you'd asked me before, I told you, I think that's still staying the same. And the only other thing that I don't understand, well, there's a few items, but I think we have a good, complete plan here. I'm a little confused about the parking, because the last time that I saw this, it seemed to indicate that there were 50 public spaces. However, on the stuff I have now, you show 280, you show that it would have required 300 and something, 16 spaces, but your calculations show that what you think you need is 286. I'm not questioning that, and I understand that's still part of this process, all of parking is a consideration, but you're only creating 286 spaces, so I'm not sure what happened to the 50. Am I missing something?
Sure. So,
Yeah, I can address that. So by code, the development would require, I think it's 317 spaces.
Okay,
We are going to ask through the planning board for an alternate calculation for calculating the demand generated by the residential units. Instead of using the zoning code's calculation.
it's on this page.
I'm sorry?
It's on this page, go ahead.
Correct. Instead of using the calculation required by the zoning code for residential units, we're gonna request 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. Okay? And that's how we come up with 289 spaces required by the developer.
But, just correct me, I was looking at this, I mean, some stuff has changed, a little bit different, of course, it's changed because of the farmer's market. Again, we're here informationally to understand what you're proposing, a little bit. It shows off-street demand per city code, 319 actually. And it shows off-street demand per owner requirements, 29 for commercial, 173 for residential using the formula. 74 for customer area, and that includes a restaurant, I guess, right? And 10 more spaces for other, for a total of 286 spaces. And off-street parking that you're providing is 286, correct?
Correct.
So, where are the 50?
Right, so what Prime is going to do is make available in the open lot 50 spaces for public use. So those 50 spaces can be used by the city, by anyone at any time.
But aren't you saying that you need them? I'm just trying to understand it.
Correct.
Don't you need it for your,
We do need it for ours, that is correct.
okay. So that's a question that I'm asking. I assume you can answer it when we get closer to, and when we're in the public hearing. But that's one of my questions is the parking seems different to me than the last time we met. That's
So
all.
I can add a little bit to that and kind of
Yeah,
also
go
address
ahead.
how we're gonna go about this. The planning board is in charge of all variations from the code. We do have to demonstrate before the planning board the 5 standards of an area variance. The parking as it exists now that we've proposed is for commercial purposes compliant with the code. What we will do before the public hearing and at the public hearing, both written and orally, we will demonstrate through your special permit standards how the parking scheme that's being studied in the GEIS will fit into the standards this board is mandated to review.
Okay.
That way, it will fold into your jurisdiction in the special use permit criteria.
The reason I'm asking this partly though is because the parking calculations that we're getting for the entire parking plan for downtown seem to include those 50 spaces. That's all. I'm not saying what you do or don't need for parking, I'm just saying that's a difference I saw, we're asking.
Yeah, sure. And I also would remind the board that part of the DRI grant, and really, and I'm kind of into Steve, the project architect's jurisdiction here, but is to create a walkable downtown and to decrease dependency on vehicles.
Yeah.
That's the goal of any downtown area that's seeking to revitalize and spark economic growth. And parking is a huge aspect of that.
Absolutely.
So we will provide a narrative that demonstrates the compliance of the parking and also the intent behind our parking scheme.
Yeah,
And the
that's
city's
great.
parking scheme.
That's why I
generally.
brought it up, so you can be prepared for it.
Yep.
Speaking of which, the other comment that I made before, and I don't see it, maybe it's not on the complete plans and will be, is I'm a little odd about parking myself, and I think that in many ways, this is an opportunity to foster and help develop more public transportation by decreasing the need for it. I didn't see a bus stop on here. And I talked about that before. There should be a good way for people to get downtown with a bus stop
Okay.
there.
We will take a look and address that in our submission.
So just to maybe just
Yeah.
add on the last comment and that comment, which are both good ones. So the overall scheme of parking within the city is being addressed in the GEIS.
Right.
And that's actually not part of this development per se, right? It's the overall project
And that might be your answer, to say this is how
Right.
the city, through the GEIS, is dealing with fostering public transportation. I'm just bringing it up as a concern, so.
No, understood, and I think, a bus stop would probably be most appropriate on Durkee Street, and again, that's not necessarily part of this project.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I'm gonna open up, now that I've dominated for a little while, to the other people so they can ask questions.
you say you changed and you're keeping the farmer's market building?
I believe the last time we were here was identified as future space.
Yes.
And then through the GEIS process, really, you can't say, hey, we're gonna have future development, right? You need to accommodate all future growth within the GEIS. So what we did was Prime went and looked at the building and decided, you know what, it's not so bad. We can rehab this building and reuse it. And so that's the plan now, is to essentially reuse that space as either commercial retail or a potential restaurant space, and actually to recreate the break of the building for indoor, outdoor, with the outdoor space as it is now being dedicated as civic space, to sort of incorporate that into the walkway, both along the Riverwalk and walkway.
Thank you.
Any questions? No?
I know it's near here.
It's gonna be a bad.
Does anybody have any questions about, it then goes to the council?
Then it goes to the council for acceptance, or they can request additional information. But once they accept it, as Charlie said, there's a 10-day waiting period before the finding statement can be published. At that point, the GEIS process is deemed complete.
And this board will be notified, there's a notice provision in SECRA. When the FGEIS is deemed accepted, this board will receive notice of its acceptance and a copy of it as well.
Okay. It's my understanding, though, that even though the GEIS is being done for the project, all the projects as a whole, the entire DRI, the seekers, the individual seekers, even if accepted as part of the GEIS, and I think actually we've been doing in general this, when we appoint a lead agency, like sometimes we say the planning board's a lead agency, not this particular, okay? Lead agency does the seeker, we go, oh, planning board did the seeker, we just move on, but I don't believe that that's actually the accurate process. I think the process should be that we at least acknowledge, not only acknowledge it, but approve
Yeah, so the secret regulations
the seeker
require
and
that.
seeker regulations. So what's gonna happen here is that we're gonna, as part of this process, I'm just sort of getting this as general information, even, in a sense, we're not, it's not like, correct me if I'm wrong, oh, the GEIS has done this, we don't get to consider the seeker. We actually are behooved and enjoined to review the seeker findings and, at a minimum, vote to accept them. I believe
So,
that's correct.
right, so the generic environmental impact statement process is a bit different than just your regular environmental impact statement
Right.
process. It was still what's known as a coordinated review. City council is the lead agency. This board is an involved agency, it would be bound by those finding statement. However, because it's generic and kind of comprehensive in nature, or conceptual in nature, excuse me, this board will review the environmental assessment form that was provided by the applicant and then compare it with the finding statement and say, okay, well, these project changes might have occurred after the finding statement, and you might identify areas where the project is completely covered by the environmental review that was done by the city council. You might find some things that weren't touched on by the city council, but you might find that those aren't significant. So you have varying degrees of deference that you can give the finding statement. One being the finding statement covers everything, which in this instance is quite thorough. The other being the finding statement is comprehensive and covers everything, but there's a few issues left unresolved. However, we find those to be not significant, and we issue a negative declaration for those issues. And what we will do before the public hearing is provide a secret narrative, and we'll submit it to ZBA council as well, kind of going through that process.
Great. I would say then that it's accurate that we will, when we actually get to voting on or discussing and having public hearings regarding the special use permits, right, that part of that process will involve us approving formally the secret process and saying that we agree with it and/or find these things that are negative or whatever. Okay, that's one. The other one is to understand.
Are you leaving the secret topic now? I have a question on this.
Oh, no, go ahead, yes.
Okay, so, on that topic, isn't it conceivable that we would find that there are some, as you put it, areas that aren't covered by the GEIS that we feel are significant and need to be addressed, or that we disagree with the overall findings? Isn't that something that could happen? It's been suggested to us that that could happen, that different agencies could have different conclusions when it comes to environmental impact.
Sure.
And that those then have to be reconciled before the project moves forward. Is that your understanding, or do you have a different?
So the way it works is, like I said, the lead agency will make their finding statement. Because it was a coordinated review and this board is involved, you're bound by those finding statements. But however, the secret regulations under the generic process give you 4 different options. So you might not agree with them, or you might, albeit I don't think this will be the case, you might say, well, this area wasn't studied enough, we want additional information. You can then adopt the city council's finding statements and issue your own finding statements in addition to them. You could adopt the city council's finding statement and issue a negative declaration for those areas that you found weren't addressed in the finding statement. There's a number of ways you can approach it, but yes,
I guess the
you are
question
right.
is, can we issue a positive declaration also that there is an impact?
You can. So essentially a positive declaration has already been issued. That's why we're going down the road of the generic environmental impact statement. What you would then do if you did find that there were still potential significant environmental impacts that were not assessed by the city council and not evaluated, then what you would do is be known as a supplemental GEIS, and that would be your board's action. But I would respectfully submit that your environmental review that you conduct is solely related to the 2 special permits in front of you. The planning board will be going through this same individual secret process for the site plan and the PUD subdivision. And that includes the variations, the parking, and so forth. Right. This board is looking at what impacts will the change of boundary have, and what impacts will the residential uses on the first floor have.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was gonna get to next is, I find it a little limiting, and not in my understanding of our code and the various guidelines that we are given, I'll call it guidelines, as to building height, character, this and that, the 5 guidelines, to talk about just the boundary. If we said, I can tell you.
Oh, no,
right now
I
that-
completely understand.
The boundary is the boundary, and why are we changing a boundary? And I would say that we're not necessarily modifying, but in fact, this is just a semantics issue, but probably creating a new PUD is supposed to modifying one, but however you put it, I think it has the same responsibility we have the same responsibility, which is to examine either the amended or newly created, however you want to say it, plan unit development to make sure that it meets that criteria, which you answer, you have your answers to it here. You obviously feel that it must meet that criteria too, or else you wouldn't have answered them. And that by talking about only the boundary is a very simple one. We had some other lots we took out, we have a lot we added in, we're creating a new boundary. That is not so much of an issue. The second one, the residential, we'll talk about in a second, but by just saying, oh, the boundary's okay, does that mean that we're saying that this building, exactly as you formulated it with all of these things, meets these criteria? And that's my question, and I've been through this, we've gotten lots of correspondence about it, that's another whole issue. But every time we've ever considered a planned unit development, it has been with a full site plan, and that has come into play. It's not just, oh, we want to create a lot this big, is it okay? And I understand that really we have to make sure that that's okay, but I think it still behooves us to make sure we consider the entire thing, just like we would for, and I've been saying, I said this downstairs and I'll say it again. We want to do no more or no less for this special use permit application than we would for any other applicant. Right? It's the same process. Everybody should be treated the same way. Same scrutiny, but same opportunities.
Sure.
Okay? So I'm a little concerned about the concept, this is my opinion now. I'm concerned about the concept of our approval of a special use permit for the boundary change, whether it's new or if it's amended, being all we have to do with it. It almost implies that we don't have to consider the uses of the building, and I'm not sure I quite.
No, and I can address it. I completely, and this is a common issue when you have more than one board involved in reviewing kind of the same application in different pieces. Absolutely, when you're reviewing the boundaries, you have to also review what's going to come. You can't just review this in a vacuum. And we will include the site plan, the development,
And you have.
all of that in there. Some of the things that are solely in the discretion of the planning board are not before this board, such as the variations.
Absolutely.
But the use, the commercial spaces, the overall concept of this use on this property in this PUD is certainly within your
As
realm
part
to
of that,
consider.
because the SUP process, as separate from the PUD process, special use permit as opposed to plan unit development, is a different process. The plan unit development process only takes place because we say this qualifies for a special permit under column 3 of the use code, it's allowed by special permit. Theoretically, it's a matter, I've said it often, it's a matter of right. However, that right is attained by meeting the requirements, and that's what we are to do, and we can. And then, you're right, all the other stuff about setbacks, all of that is under the auspices of the planning board. However, we still can't just, it'd be so easy to just go, oh, we're only gonna, and I've said it, we're just gonna do the boundary, everything else is the planning board, get mad at them.
I completely understand where you're coming
Right.
from, and
So,
we'll fit it in.
that's one, I'm a little confused also because on the second one, since we're in this whole process, the residential uses on the first floor, I thought always, and we were part of changing that, by the way. It's not because so much as necessarily that they're allowed, they're only, the only place that restricts residential uses on the first floor is the central business district. It was made as a condition of plan unit developments. When we changed the plan unit development size in the central business district, we also allowed those residential uses within that planned unit development only, because the rest of downtown is not allowed to have them, because the point was not to have apartments where there should be storefronts. Okay? However, I'm a little concerned because now it talks about them on Bridge Street, and I'm wondering why there are apartments on Bridge Street when that would seem to lend itself more to commercial uses. And I thought the point was, we discussed changing that ordinance was so people facing the river could be on the first floor and have views of the river and stuff like that. So that's a comment I'd like to have addressed. I'm not saying, and I think part of Bridge Street is actually up almost to being a second floor. I'm more concerned about it on the, which is still technically your first floor, so I want to understand where that changes as it gets up Bridge Street, where they're on the street. Does that make sense?
You're 100% correct. Oh, go ahead.
I can address that.
Right.
There's about a 10-foot drop from the corner of Murphy and Bridge. That's actually what sets the
Right.
first floor elevation. It's not a flat site.
Right, I
You
understand.
probably realize. So when you get to the end of the site by the bridge, there's about a 10-foot drop in elevation. So the units, the first units actually occur about 1/3 that length. I don't have the exact dimension, but we otherwise share the same concern. We typically go with
Okay,
it's
yeah. And I just wanted to ask that
obvious
question.
reasons. So it's gonna be elevated probably at least 4 or 5 feet above sidewalk level. So because it's a sloping site,
Right.
calling it the first floor is really a referencing system in terms of levels of the building. And it's not a true reflection of the
Right.
relationship to.
And I thought that might be, I just want to make.
Yeah, we'll address it in
So
our
it'll
next
be
submission.
private
Right,
and appropriate.
okay. Other questions, anybody?
Not right now.
Okay, so we have, you're gonna be changing this plan, you said, from what we have now in a few different ways, right?
Yeah, we'll be responding to comments we received from the planning board on the 23rd.
Great.
Actually, I did want to, I mean, you said something about the elevation might be changing. Do you have any sort of sneak peek on that? Or you just-
They're not completed yet.
Okay.
We're still working through some of the site design details, but we're gonna basically give the same package to you guys that we gave the planning board, that'll address those concerns.
Okay.
And you predict that we'll have those before the February 10th meeting?
Yeah, we hope to meet the next submission deadline for that meeting. I believe it's the 27th, unless I'm getting my dates crossed.
When is it, Joe? It's at the,
I actually don't have it off the top of my head.
But yes, we do plan on getting that to you in a timely fashion.
I think it's Friday,
it's this Friday, right?
24th.
I just lost 3
Are they-
days.
Yeah, but, well, wait a minute, I don't know if that's, this is an application before us, isn't it?
Yes.
So in a sense, it's gone to the county.
Not yet, only the draft
Pass the county.
GEIS has
Oh,
gone
only
to
the
the
draft,
county.
and it has to go to the county, right?
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, Friday.
Okay.
Is that, 4
Even if
p.m.?
you modify it
Excuse me.
again.
Okay.
Is that 4 p.m.? Is there a time?
Yeah, end of the day, close of business.
Sounds good.
Materials are important, sizes. I did find, by the way, thank you, last time I requested the views down Durkee and Bridge and all that stuff, thank you very much. They're good. It's funny because I think, as I looked at them, this one, let me make sure I'm on the right one. The one looking down Durkee Street, I find that the building scale doesn't seem that much different as the one when I looked down Bridge Street, which is what I really, was the one I mostly asked you about. You do get the building scale, it's all, I understand this perspective, I get the whole rendering thing. But you can tell the difference in this building and the other ones, and you get a decent sense of scale from this one. This one, and it's because of the rendering, how it works, it almost looks smaller than the buildings across the street, I get that. But these are helpful. I would say that, you know, they're very helpful. So, I don't know if you're gonna be able to have these ready necessarily for Friday as opposed to elevations, the rendering?
Updated, you mean?
Right, is it Revit anyway, is it Revit?
No, we use several different types of software.
Okay. All right,
But we'll try.
Can we get the opposite direction?
I couldn't hear you.
Can we get the opposite direction?
Can we get the opposite,
Sounds great.
looking up Bridge Street?
West.
I think that'll be a challenge to try. We'll have to get the photo first, let someone have a photo handy.
Right?
So probably not for Friday. I think even the updated
Right.
versions
If,
of those.
as long as you can, one thing I would tell you, there's two different parts to this. One is the elevations of the building, the other is the renderings.
Yep.
I would say at a minimum, if you're gonna go to the county with this, you need at least the elevations, the 2D elevations, by Friday. Don't forget that that is 10 days before the first Wednesday, which is the county meeting. Is that Friday, it's actually Sunday or something, but we do it Friday. Okay, so there could be some fill-in time after that, as long as the application's to them.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
If it's the intention of the applicant to wait to forward the applications to the county planning board for consideration until their March meeting rather than their February meeting, the 24th deadline this week, that would be in order for the building inspector's office to forward it to the county for consideration at their February meeting, correct, Jim?
I'm not sure if
That's
we
right,
can have.
yes.
Okay.
That's what this deadline is to get it to the county for the February meeting.
Right.
Okay, so as an application before the board, do we have to have, if we're not intending for those applications to be forwarded to the county this month?
I think we need,
deadline
I
get
think we have to
extended,
be,
Or is it the 24th in either case?
I think we have to go to the county before we can schedule our public hearing, is that correct? I would think,
Now, I'm simply asking if we don't have to worry about forwarding the application to the county for their February meeting, do we have to submit any additional information for consideration at your February
Well,
meeting?
yeah, because you're
by
saying
this
you're changing-
Friday, or does that deadline get
yeah,
extended?
because you're saying you're changing what it's gonna look like, we're gonna have public comment. But I'm also concerned, I don't know, I can't tell you if this is true, but it would seem to me that we have to go to the county before we can have our public hearing.
There's no requirement that you do. We would notice the county of the public hearing, but there's no requirement that the referral be
Okay.
complete.
Unless there's, I don't wanna answer that because I don't know the answer.
Yeah, we can confer with council.
Check with Joe and find out, that would be that's one consideration, whether or not we have to, the county, has to do their agenda before we can have our public hearing. I'm not saying it is, I just wanna make sure. I don't wanna say, yes, you can do this, and then find out if that's true, so. But still for ours in February, which is the 10th, we're gonna wanna see this new information in a little bit before, we need to get it out in packets. They need to bring it to each member, so it's not gonna be on the 9th.
Yeah, no, understood.
That's all. So, I mean, you're also hindered by the fact that we're a week earlier, a little bit.
Understood.
So maybe that deserves some special
Okay.
scheduling.
In short, we will get the information to the board as soon as possible,
Yeah,
well in
yeah.
advance of when we have a public
Yeah,
hearing.
and piecemeal is okay, if they can keep bringing it out to us.
Okay, great.
Do we have anything else, or are we done with them for tonight? Okay, so I want to thank you all for coming from wherever, all over. And I want to thank the public for coming and being patient because you didn't get to say anything or anything. I hope you learned some stuff. Make sure you get the packet information offline. If you have any problems, call the building inspector. We'll make sure that everybody can see what's going on, as we'd like the public to stay informed so they understand what's being asked.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think so. But it's a little out of the ordinary lately. I think the last meeting I came to was that guy. And they said, "We
What's our jurisdiction? We don't get into the nitty gritty. That's the planning board probably is the use overall.
You're real, you're dedicated.
It's a little bit more than just.
You're a different species than the rest.
Some people have been known to say that, yes. Not necessarily about this, but other reasons.
Well, they don't.
So how was your holiday and everything?
Excellent.
Did you guys travel?
No, the girls came home, but even.
They're all stateside? Or?
Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
Somebody
No.
abroad?
One's in San Francisco.
Oh, don't do that.
We
should close
went
out
to
the meeting
San
first,
Francisco.
Ron. We should close the meeting up
Huh?
first. We should close the meeting up first. We're done.
Oh, yeah, wait, yeah, we gotta do our meeting first.
Pretty cool.
I'm sorry.
We used to live out there.
Okay,
We lived in Santa Clara, so.
we have other business?
I wasn't here for those minutes.
Minutes?
Yeah, what the hell is the story?
Well,
We're done.
as Scott,
We're done.
as Scott advised me, he doesn't miss meetings.
At least I get to go to the end. Okay.
And yet I was still reappointed. You know, go figure. But I
All
have to
right.
take a night with you. So
The
everything
meeting minutes, me, Scott, Megan, and Elliot. All right, did anybody have any problems with the meeting minutes? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion in regards to the zoning board of appeal meeting minutes, December 16th, 2019, to be approved as written.
Second, all in favor of the
Aye.
board? Okay. That's the meeting minutes.
And I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, seconded, Scott, all in favor to adjourn? Okay.
That I
Beat
can
me to
do.
that one.
That one I can do. I'm an expert at that one. Yeah. Missing meetings, adjourning.